Hi, my name is Tiffany Hines-Gutierrez, and tonight I'm going to talk to you about business communication and how it's made me a better communicator. This term, we learned many things about communication, and one of the first things we learned was about listening. We learned something called being an active listener. I think we can all agree there are times that we're hearing what people are saying, we're not actually listening. I myself have found myself in the habit in the past of hearing what someone was saying to me, but instead of really listening, I was thinking about what I wanted to say to them. Therefore, I wasn't truly listening. And I think when it comes to listening, a very important part of it is feedback. When the speaker's speaking, to ensure that the listener is really listening and following and getting what you want out of the communication process, there should be some kind of feedback. And I think that's one of the key issues with listening. I mean, especially when you're in a business meeting environment or any kind of training environment, you want to make sure that your audience is understanding and getting the message that you're trying to put forth to them. And to do that, feedback. And in a way, feedback may even be a question segment at the end of the presentation. Or you can even solicit responses from your audience. And speaking of audience, this is another thing that we learn in business communication, this term, is that sometimes we go in to a room with it. First of all, it's very important to know your audience. Obviously, if I'm an engineer and I'm going through in a room speaking to other engineers, I'm going to assume a certain expertise level and I'm going to speak accordingly. It's very important to know your audience and know what your audience understands and what it doesn't understand. So, and when you're speaking generally to an audience, it's important not to use jargon, not to use slang or regional words that may not be fully understood. This is very, very important in the business environment. And also, when you're in meetings and you're speaking overseas, it's even more important because there are differences even with the gesturing between what is culturally okay in one country and what's culturally okay in another. For example, we as Americans, we tend to be very uncomfortable when someone is speaking closely to us or sitting very close to us speaking, and we have a tendency to back up. But in Asian cultures, that is very typical. Also, especially in job interviews and business meetings, we assume, for the most part anyway, that when someone is looking us in the eye, that they're telling us the truth, they're shooting straight with us, so to speak. And if they're not, they're trying to hide something or it's a sign of dishonesty or not being trustworthy. Whereas, again, in an Asian environment, that is considered disrespectful to look someone in the eye. And these are just in communication, that's a good example of some cultural differences that you have to take into account, especially considering that we're in such a global economy now. Another thing we learn in business communication is when it comes to when is it appropriate for an email, when is it appropriate for a memo, when is it appropriate to send a letter. And I think we understand, like, on our basic routine day-to-day environments, email is okay. And email is a big thing in my particular office. And what I really learned this term about email, and it may seem very simple, but it's subject lines. I had a tendency to not write a subject line altogether or to use such a general subject line such as time and attendance. And now I use time and attendance and the employee's name. I try to be a lot more specific because sometimes when you go into the office and you have 50 emails, you may be waiting for a particular email, but if the subject line is not on a particular subject, that is, if the subject line is not specific enough, it may take you a while to wait through those those emails. So I think it's very important. It's definitely changed the way I approach email when it comes to subject lines. And there's also replying in mail to like inquiries and requests for credit and different things of that nature. I learned that the direct method is best for requiring to inquiry or just responding to a request for information. And that indirect method reply is best for delivering bad news or attempting to persuade someone. I used to wonder when I opened up my mail and I got a letter from a company denying credit, why it took me 5 minutes to figure out what they were talking about. But I understand now that that's just a way of using the indirect method, and that is considered normal, especially when it comes to delivering bad news, such as denial of credit. So you can see, we learn a lot of things in business communications this term. So I look forward to using it very much more in business and a training environment and things of that nature. All right, thank you. It's been nice speaking.